Okay, so what I've been doing this for quite a while. I started Ancient American Magazine in 1993, and I had no idea that I'd be coming out and addressing members of the church. This is really a surprise, and it's been awesome. It's been just a wonderful, wonderful time. And I'll cover some things as we go. What I'm going to do tonight, I've kind of divided up a whole bunch of little sections of things that touch upon the archaeology of the Midwest. Now, what I want you to make sure you understand, there is nothing out here in the Midwest that I could pick up and hand you and say this is a Nephite artifact. What we like to talk about is parallels. We look for things in the Book of Mormon that match the archaeological evidence that we can find throughout the Midwest. And I always tell people, if I'm out there and I pick up a really neat artifact, I look on the back side, it's not going to say Maiden Zarahemla. And I wish it would. My favorite really is Manti Ironworks. I'd like to find one of those. But anyway, as we do that and we find these parallels, it is my personal belief that this first group of people that we're going to talk about really are Nephites that match the Book of Mormon timeline. And that's what we're going to unroll tonight as we go through these various images. But again, I can't stand here and tell you it is them. I just can tell you that I believe it is them. And I leave the rest up to you. So I'm just going to show you what is out there, and we can have some fun with that. So with that, let's just go on. Introduction. This right here is the Hopewell Mound site we call Mound City. I want you particularly to notice the date at 500 BC to 400 AD. That's very important because that date is what we're going to be working on all the way through tonight. That is the timeline for a group called Hopewell. So now the name could have been your last name. It's just that when the Smithsonian got around to identifying this particular timeline, the farm of the man that they worked upon when they opened up these various mounds, his name happened to be Hopewell. So therefore they named it after him, the Hopewell culture. And so that's how we get this. But 500 BC to 400 AD, that's where we find these people. And as obviously you can see how close it is for us for Book of Mormon. But first let's take a look at this. When I joined the church in 1970, I was taught that Lehi landed somewhere down there on the tip of South America, and I know you all seen the same thing. I was also taught that the events of the Book of Mormon took place right there in South America and in Central America. And then I was also taught that somewhere in that Central America area, somewhere up here, there were at least 4 and possibly 6 potential hill Comoras for the last battle, because, you see, if you have all this going on, Hill Cumorah has to be somewhere down here where the battle was held, the final battle. And then, of course, what happens when the battle is over, poor Moroni, what does he have to do? He's got to carry that 60-pound weight, we're told, all the way up to a second Cumorah, which happens to be in present-day Palmyra, New York. Now, this is what I was taught in 1970. And as a convert to the church, it had nothing to do with archaeology. My conversion was completely spiritual. All this for me came after, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But this is what I was taught, this is what I was shown, and so that's what we call the two-hill Cumorah theory. I want to make sure that you know tonight what I'm presenting to you because of my belief, because of the artifacts that I found and the various sites, that I am a one-hill guy. New York. That's where I'm at. That's where I believe it all took place. The last battle, as well as the burial of the plates that Joseph Smith would be led to. Now, this right here is what really did it for me. In 1989, my wife and I had been to Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City, by the way, was our temple district from Wisconsin. It's only 1,400 miles one way. We didn't get there too often. But when we did, we'd fill up our car with food storage and books, because we couldn't get that in Wisconsin. But riding back, reading the book here from Dean C. Jesse, we arrived this morning on the banks of the Mississippi. We left the eastern part of the state of Ohio, wandering over the plains of the Nephites, recounting occasionally the history of the Book of Mormon. roving over the mounds that once beloved people of the Lord, picking up their skulls and bones as proof of its divine authenticity, signed Joseph Smith, Jr. Well, I got to tell you, I've been in the church now for 19 years. And when I saw this, because I had the background of Hopewell archaeology, my wife, I remember I turned to her and I said, and some of you will recognize this, I said, Houston, we got a problem. And I meant that sincerely, because for me right there, that's when the floodgates opened. And I knew we just had to get our guys in Mesoamerica to come out to the east and check out the Hopewell. There's just too many parallels, and that's what I want to address. Here is the area that we're talking about right here. This is the eastern half of our country. This was put together in the 1890s by the Smithsonian. This represents, we figure, about 10% of the mounds and the fortifications and the enclosures of this timeline, only 10% upon first contact, starting with Columbus. 90% is already gone. This is 1890. And right now, today, about another third of this is already gone down to urban sprawl. Some of it, of course, selectively is being saved. And as you can see, the hot spots, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Illinois, along the Mississippi, Ohio, of course. And we got a real clumping down here in Florida as well, and we'll get to that. So, the new prevailing theories for Book of Mormon locations are this. South America has been totally dropped by academia out of BYU. South America is out of the picture. So if you're still hanging on to that, you guys got a lot of catching up to do. Everything from Mesoamerica has been moved here. This is about 1,000 square mile where they feel the entire Book of Mormon took place right there, and that's their deal. And of course, this is the Mesoamerica model. Now, people who believed in Cumorah of New York being both sites, out of respect for the scholars at BYU, they took the same model and dropped it on Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and then of course around the general area. And that's what we call the limited geography model for North America. A lot of good people there, and I've been working really hard to get them to expand. Because the problem when they do that, our Hopewell group that we looked at 500 BC to 400 AD, they don't even begin to live here until around 200 AD. So we're missing several hundred years of their occupation. But the minute you take in what I showed you previously, that whole area, which is called the Hopewell interaction sphere, now you've got everything in the timeline. And you have Joseph Smith's support on the statements that he makes supporting this. And that's our Hopewell sphere. That's where I do my work, and that's how I look at these people. So, mound builders of North America. Here they are. If you notice, late Archaic, Adena, we can get our entire Jaredite group out of that area for the time. And then Hopewell, we've got our Nephites, our Mulekites, and our Lamanites, 500 BC, 500 AD. And then down here later, we have the Mississippians, which don't come in until about 900 AD. So we have right here, 500 AD, 900 AD, we've got a large gap in our archaeological context, or horizon, as we call it, in the field. And why would that be? What happened when the Nephite nation went down at 385? What happened at that time? The Lamanites and the apostate Nephites continued to fight amongst themselves. And it was so bad. For me, North America has a Dark Ages just like what's going on where? Europe. Same time. Dark Ages, both hemispheres. And right about 900 AD, all of you have heard the story of Hiawatha with the peacekeeper, Dagana Wida, that comes down from the sky and settles things. They set up the Longhouse, the Medewan Lodge, and everything becomes, well, supposedly hunky-dory, but you know, it was better, much better. And then we begin to see buildings and things like that, and the people now are less nomadic. So the question is, are the Hopewell and Nephites the same people? Language and script. This is something that has to be looked at very carefully. All anthropologists today, they go straight for linguistics when they're looking at an ancient culture. Glottochronology is the attempt to estimate how long ago two languages separated from a common ancestor by evaluating their degree of divergence on a list of key words Linguists applied this technique to the Algonquin dictionaries compiled by early colonists. The results indicated that the various Algonquian languages in New England all date back to a common ancestor that appeared in the Northeast a few centuries before Christ. I think we can take that, can't we? And then down here, the ancestral language may derive from what is known as, there's our boys, Hopewell culture. If you want a good read, 1491, New Revelations of the Americas Before Columbus by Charles C. Mann. I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful read. And the best thing about what's coming forth in the Midwest, the work is being produced by non-LDS archaeologists. That way they can't accuse us, you see, of planting or plotting to deceive. It has to come from non-members of the church. Very, very important. Now, all of you, of course, Old Testament names. Look at this. Isaiah, Noah, Terah, Methuselah, Ahijah. The AH or the IH sound is characteristic for these Hebrew words. And we look over here, of course, our Book of Mormon names. Has anything changed? Of course not. They're in the same timeline. What happens if we jump to our Native Americans? These are real Native American chiefs of the Algonquin family in the East. Look at their last names. This does not happen by accident. This is a complete carryover to our time. Linguistics, very, very important. And then here, the same thing, just the H has been dropped against the same sound. No different, not a thing. And then we find throughout North America, we find tablets with all kinds of script. The one that's really surprised is cuneiform. This is 3000 to 1000 BC out of Mesopotamia and the Fertile Crescent area, and we've got cuneiform all over the Great Lakes. But what does academia tell us? Nobody here before who? Columbus. Therefore, it has to be what? It has to be fake. Fraud. Spurious is another word you'll come across. But these are the plates we find throughout the Midwest. Tablets, beautiful design, 13-month calendar set on a lunar cycle. Hebrews, 13-month calendar set on a lunar cycle. Here we have a lovely temple looking building. We've got the name of God over the door in cuneiform, Yod He Vah He, and that's the symbol up here, Yod He Vah He. And again, this tablet up here, I don't know, can you see this in the back well enough? This right here is a guy sitting holding a shepherd's crook. And here's a woman holding up a child. And here's a woman that's leaving. Obviously, what story is that? Solomon. And the moms with the two fighting over the live baby. The shepherd's crook represents deity and royalty. And then we find this here. The largest mound for the Hopewell uncovered in Ohio was called the Great Stack. It took 10,000 wagons to haul the stone pile away to create a dam and to riffraff a man-made lake. And this whole story was given in the Journal of Discourses right here by Elder Orson Pratt in 1870. This stone has a complete rendition of Hebrew all the way around the sides and the back, and it's a complete rendition of 10 Commandments. Ohio, Hopewell, parallels, okay? And right up here, 3 letters that say Moshe. That's Hebrew for Moses. This is on display at the Humrick House Museum in Ohio, and you can go there whenever you like. It's open to the public. But again, this is just so fantastic to find this. We have over, I'm going to say, 16 definite things we can identify as Hebrew writing in North America. I mean, definite Hebrew. There's no guessing. How many Hebrew things can we find south of the Rio Grande? Anybody know? 0. Even if they're fake, nothing has come up south of the Rio Grande. But we got it here all over America. Keystone also came out of Ohio. Pure Hebrew. This was read by the rabbis, and they translated for us. There it is. King of the earth, word of the Lord, laws of Jehovah, holy of holies. Keystone. Found in 1860. And then you go to Connecticut, top of Pinnacle Mountain. We have the early prophets. Isaac, Abraham, Adam, Moses. Pounded. This is solid granite. Somebody cut these in. We don't know. We have no idea when this was done. But there it is in the state of Connecticut. And then, of course, you all recognize this, right? The Anthon transcript. A lot of information we're looking here. Let's take a look. One thing we need to realize how rare paper was in Joseph's day. Paper was expensive. It's not like we have stuff laying around, even scrap paper in our houses. But as they begin to write this, we're assuming Martin wrote it down, perhaps Oliver for Joseph. But evidently, of course, Martin took this to Professor Anthon. But notice the size of the characters. He starts writing here, pretty good, same size. And right about here, he realizes he might be in trouble. Look at the script. And the bottom line, oh man, I don't even know how he made it. What's interesting, if we could read this, this would be one little paragraph from the 116 pages that are missing. One little piece. But let's check this out. In Maine, Newfoundland, and Nova Scotia, the Algonquin tribe called the Micmac, the real pronunciation is Mi'kmaq, that's what they prefer. We pronounce it Micmac. The Jesuit priests who were there in the late 1600s, early 1700s, saw the children writing messages on birch bark and passing them around just playing games. And then they found out they had a written language. This right here is off the Anthon transcript to your left. This right here is the Micmac. Look at the comparisons. They're almost exact. In some cases, they are. The Micmac, Mi'kmaq, have a written language that was in existence on first contact. Dr. Barry Fell comes along, America, BC. He's out of Harvard. He says, at first glance, I perceived about half at least of the hieroglyphic signs were remarkably similar to Egyptian hieroglyphs as rendered in the simple cursive form called hieratic. That's over here. And then he concludes by saying, it is evident that the Micmac hieroglyphs must have already been transmitted to North America more than 2,000 years ago when they were still in use in Egypt. Parallels, parallels, parallels. Amazing. Okay? And this one here is something that I really like, 1 Nephi 13, 39 through 40, other books. And after it, that's the Bible, had come forth unto them the remnant of the seed of my brethren, I beheld other books which came forth by the power of the Lamb from the Gentiles, unto them unto the convincing of, 1, the Gentiles, 2, the remnant of the seed of my brethren, and 3, the Jews that were scattered upon the face of the earth, that the records of the prophets and of the 12 apostles of the Lamb are true. And the angel spake unto me, saying that these last records, which thou hast seen among the Gentiles, shall establish the truth of the first. I'll bet you're going to see something here you've never seen before. This right here. The first Bible ever written and published in North America was not written in English. It was written in Algonquin, 1663. My thinking is, could this be one of the other books talked about in our scriptures? The Native Americans use this all the time in the East. This is their Bible. It's written in Algonquin. They've had it since all this time. Fantastic. And John Eliot is a missionary that put this together. It took him 12 years of his life. And I'll just say it because somebody always comes and tells me the name Eliot is not spelled wrong. He only used one L. Somebody always tells me that. So let's take a look at some artifacts. Everybody likes artifacts. These are normal Hopewell artifacts. If you can call normal, this is their normal. Okay? These are Hopewell artifacts. Here we've got gorgets, we got pendants, got copper points, we've got our typical flint axe heads. This is a 3/4 axe. It's flat on one side. They can go up as much as 20 pounds. Most of them are 6 to 10. They make great bookends, by the way, because they're flat on one side. Oh, they're lovely. I got a bunch of them. Hammerstones from Upper Michigan and gorgeous pipes. Typical. And these here, if anything is done in the earth and you find one of these are called platform pipes. Only the Hopewell made these pipes. Those that came before them, no. And those that came after, no. Only the Hopewell made effigy platform pipes. High class, hard work. Anybody want to guess what one of these would cost you if you go to an artifact show? Anybody want to guess? Guess. What?
$1 million.
That's too much.
Too much.
They start about $10,000. And they go up from there. How about some concrete? Yeah, we got concrete in the Midwest. All the mounds have concrete. You don't hear about it, they don't talk about it, but you go ask your curator who's standing there behind the counter, and they usually pull out a little box from underneath and put it on the counter, and they show you the concrete. Floors, concrete. A lot of the mounds had concrete caps because of erosion. Pearls. Book of Mormon talks about all kinds of pearls. We have freshwater pearls all over the Midwest. And look at here, Hopewell, Hamilton County, 48,000 pearls out of that mound alone, the Turner. And down here, another Hopewell site, over 100,000 pearls came out. And then what caught my eye down here, they're drilled and strung as a necklace or sewn onto clothing. The Hopewell don't wear buckskin. They wear woven fabric, and you don't see that very often. They always show them in the paintings in buckskin, and it's absolutely incorrect. You go to the museum in Columbus, they've got 2 huge cabinets, probably about 8 to 10 feet long. The drawers are all thin and narrow, and you pull out one drawer at a time, and you'll see fabric laid out, row after row after row after row that have recovered from the mounds. Fabric, material, no buckskin. What's that? Are you sure? No. You'd flunk archaeology in the Midwest. This is supposed to be a highly stylized pitchfork. Now, when you talk to the Potawatomi that own this stone in Michigan, they will tell you this is a symbol of our ancient ancestors. That's what they'll tell you. But you won't find that in your history books. This one here was a lot of fun. I had the good fortune, my daughter and her husband, they're military. He's a doctor, Rota, Spain. Got to go over there. You know, and once I got there, I didn't realize, my gosh, $25-50. I can't remember the name of the airline, but it's unbelievable. You stand in line and they take you off. You can go anywhere in Europe for $25-50. It's incredible. So we jumped over to Rome, and we're going down. I can't even pronounce this Italian name. We're in the museum. This right here is from northern Wisconsin. I have this. This is brass. Look at that thing, 4 inches long. I figure, well, I don't know, maybe it's for a lady's hair, you know, rolled up in a bun on the head. Maybe it's for a cloak. Hold her cloak together. Didn't know what it was. So I'm over in Rome. These are the ones where it came from my friend Scott. And Matt, the one I got is this one right here. This is the same piece right here. That's this one. And then I'm over in Rome, and I'm walking along, and I find these. And I thought, holy mackerel, it's the same thing. Writing styluses for wax tablets. And this came out of northern Wisconsin, upper Michigan. Incredible find. Seasons, migrations. Boy, this is just a real killer. How many seasons do we have? How many migrating animals do we have in Central and South America? Anybody want to guess? There's no migrating animals in Central America or South America. Only North America, right here, migrating beasts. It's all through your scriptures, but not south of the Rio Grande, just North America. Oh, this is a good one too. Normally, when you see this in the museums, it'll say bird of prey, it'll say hawk, falcon, eagle. What is this? It's a parrot, isn't it? Of course it is. And I was fortunate enough, after many, many years, I got them to drop the names at Mound City. They now actually call it just a bird. They can't say parrot. It's a bird. But what we find in the Hopewell mounds, as they're excavated, we find the bones of parrots and parakeets in the burial mounds. What are parrots and parakeets doing in Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio? They're there because the climate was different. That's the key. These birds today are only in Florida and deep Louisiana, Mississippi, along the coast. There's been a climate shift, and that's easily done. You go on your computers at home and look up the Little Ice Age, 1200 to 1300 AD, and you'll understand the climate of the Book of Mormon. Mining and smelting. Native Americans did not have the skill. They did not have the technology to smelt. That is what we were taught. Yet, what do we find? Look at here. Now we're in the Jaredite timeline, which is our Adena culture, late archaic. This is the Keweenaw Peninsula on top of Wisconsin, that little thumb sticking up in Lake Superior. This is solid copper, not just sporadic. This is a solid copper vein. 10,000 ancient copper pits are just on the Keweenaw. We have 5,000 out on Isle Royal, 17 miles off this coast, going toward Canada. And all these pits, look at the dates, the carbon material from the dates. Think of the Jaredite timeline. Look at the dating. This is all Jaredite timeline. 100%. It just doesn't get any better than this. And the work's being done for us. We just have to go read it, and go find it, and put it together. Here's what the copper mines look like. Maximum depth of holes are usually not over 30 feet. They would take out all the ore they possibly could, and then they'd leapfrog and dig another one right next to it. So there's holes everywhere. I mean, literally, they're everywhere. If you were to go up here, if you're into camping, you go up here and camp at night, and you get up to leave your tent to go take care of yourself somewhere, you better carry a flashlight. You're going to end up in a hole. They're everywhere, and I kid you not. They are everywhere, hole upon holes. This right here is a smelted copper point. Absolutely gorgeous. Just as smooth as a baby's bottom. Smelted. This right here comes out of the Garrett site out of Ohio down by Chillicothe. William Connor found this. This is clay mold. This is clay. And this right here is an iron axe head still in the mold from the Garrett site in Ohio. Smelting. All over. This right here is from the Garrett site. Cut stone. This is limestone. And this right here is the green slag. These are the impurities that come off during the smelting process. It does not exist in Mother Nature. Only man can make green slag during the smelting process. This is one cut brick from the smelter to show you what it looks like. Smelting. Connor has about 110 smelters identified just in Ohio. 110. Academics tell us, well, it must be from the French and the English, and they're fighting out for the country. And no. All these are built in a fashion that we find common with Rome and the Middle East, around 100 AD. And this is a good one, Mound 25 at the North Platte site. Right down here, they're looking at copper, and here we go, iron celts, which is an axe, copper and iron breastplates, right down here. All this material is stored at the Field Museum in Chicago, but they only show you the copper because copper can also be melted. So they claim all the smooth copper is just melted. It can easy test the differentiation between melted and smelted copper. It's very easy to do, but they'll never show you the iron because that would definitely show high tech, sophistication. They don't want that. It's unfortunate. Ships, Book of Mormon tells us, all kinds of shipping throughout the Book of Mormon lands. We know the rivers and the lakes of North America were wider and deeper during their timeline. We know this. And so shipping is very possible. We do find a few things. We find anchors. They've survived the 2,000-year rot period. This is where the ropes go through. If you could put these in anywhere in the Middle East, it'd look just the same. And this one down here is kind of special. Unfortunately, it's been weathered off. This is called a signature anchor. This would have the name of the captain of the ship, sometimes even chief men of the crew, written on the anchor, so they know what's going on for the boat. And then these are from the Middle East. These are crucifix and ship nails right here. And right here from Upper Michigan on Lake Superior, we have ship nails. This guy's got a whole pail full of them. He's got a ship out of Lake Superior. We're trying to raise money to go after it. Man, oh man, what a tale. Place of landing. Everybody wants to know where Lehi landed. Does everybody want to know where Lehi landed? Yes? Okay. I'm going to show you where Lehi landed. Helaman 610. Now the land south was called Lehi, the land north was called Mulek, which was after the son of Zedekiah, for the Lord did bring Mulek into the land north and Lehi into the land south. But what's really interesting, these two groups will stay separated for 400 years. Now I ask you, think back to the 1,000 square mile circle on Mesoamerica and the limited geography up by Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Do you think these two groups could have stayed apart in that area for 400 years? I say it's impossible. There's no way. But here, on the whole country, yeah, and they did stay apart. Lehi enters the land south, 610. This is the oldest Hopewell site in all of North America, and it's called the Deptford Phase. All Hopewell, all Florida, right here. Look at the dates here, 550 BC. They find enough contextual material to get carbon dating. Perfect timing for Lehi's guys. And the best place to go if you want to look at it online, this right here is Crystal River, Florida. That's the site you want to turn into. It's absolutely gorgeous. Now, let's look at the scriptures. And it came to pass that we did begin to till the earth, we began to plant seeds, yea, we did put all our seeds into the earth from the land of Jerusalem. Now, if that's the case, that tells me they had to land somewhere in a place that is similar to their home country. Would you agree with that? I think that'd be, yeah, that's normal. So I got to thinking, I wonder what the latitude is of Jerusalem. Well, it happens to be 31.7 degrees. Follow your map all the way around. Now I'm going to walk that latitude all the way back to North America, Florida, 31.7 degrees. Did the Lord take care of these guys? I'd say, yeah, he did. And because they could plant when they landed, that tells me they had to arrive in the spring, which means they had to leave sometime November, December-ish to get over here in a 3 or 4 month journey to arrive in Florida for the year's planting. Okay, figure things out. Logistics, it's not that tough. Okay, how about the Mulekites? They're going to the land north. This is a magazine, it's really a very prestigious magazine, and it says the diffusionists have landed. Here is a Knights Templar, you've probably seen all that on television. Here's a Hebrew fellow, and here's a Chinese fellow. We have enough sites in North America for all three of these to keep us busy for a very long time. The key word here is diffusion. If you believe that Lehi and the Jaredites and the Mulekites all came back to this land, like the Book of Mormon tells us, before Christopher Columbus, that means you are a diffusionist by default. You can't get out. You're in the camp. Okay? That's it. You're all diffusionists. If you reject that notion that ancient man had the maritime technology to sail across the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean, then you are an isolationist. Isolationism is what's taught in our schools and universities. They don't teach diffusion. We have a guy here, Mark Stengel, that put this article together. He had a major guy, an Algonquin fellow, a nice chief, matter of fact, out of Denver, talking about Red Sky's migration chart. Now my friend Fred picked this up. Fred took me to the St. Ignace, Michigan to show me this chart made by the Ojibwa of the Algonquin Nation. These are benchmarks all along the St. Lawrence River. Now, they're not in a straight line, obviously, but to make things easy on birch bark, this is how they draw it out. But over here, it looks like it's broken. And Fred pointed that out to the curator, and he said, it looks like something's missing. The curator said, no, there's nothing missing. This is the whole chart. And Fred says, well, St. Lawrence, if they're that way, it looks like these people came from the east, across the Atlantic. And he says, no, all Native Americans came from the west, right, across the Bering Strait, and they walked here, across the ice sheet when it was connected. Boats, they didn't need any boats. And Fred said, well, there's no path archaeologically diagonally across Canada to bring these people into North America and, you know, connect Canada. And he said, well, it's just the way it is because we know these guys couldn't make boats. They couldn't possibly sail across the sea. So Fred goes out and he finds the missing part. This is the missing piece. The break was right here. Here's shoreline, ocean. Here's the other shoreline, and they're sailing from the east coming to this new land. What do the boats look like? What do you think? Turtles. A dish unto a dish. You ever heard that before? Sure you have. Guess how many turtle boats they came over in? 8. Now, this is a Jaredite story now mingled in with our Algonquin people. And it has to make you wonder if the Jaredites and these guys somehow got together and all the Jaredites really didn't die south of the St. Lawrence in the state of what would become New York. But they've got that story. It's part of their thing. And when they teach their children, this is their map that they make for their schools on the reservation lands. This is where they came. That's how they came down the St. Lawrence into the Great Lakes and settled this whole area right there. This is their story. And they'll tell you straight out, we came from the east. When the fellow was talking, he said, he was asked by the archaeologists, he said, would you please tell us, where did your people come from? And the Native Americans said, well, we left a land in turmoil. We sailed across the Atlantic Ocean in ships. We sailed into the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, sailed all the way to the Great Lakes, and then we settled this country, just like you see on this map. And when he said that, all of the archaeologists and anthropologists present got into a big uproar. And they said, well, Mr. Deloria, why have you waited all this time to tell us this great story? And in that magazine I showed you, you can go look it up, pull it out of the library, Vine simply answered the whole group, and he said, you never asked. You see, we tell them their history. We don't listen to them. And they have a history to tell. But we have ignored our red neighbors. Shame on us. Mulekites landed in the north. Mulekites had the Great Lakes even until they came to land which they called Bountiful, and it bordered upon the land which they called Desolation, it being far northward. It came into the land which had been peopled and been destroyed, which was discovered by the people of Zarahemla, being the place of their first landing. So where did they land? They landed in the north. The Mulekites, as far as I'm concerned, to do what's said here, they had to come down the St. Lawrence Seaway. And the reason for that also is because they had to pick up a hitchhiker. Who did the Mulekites pick up? Starts with a C. Coriantumr. They picked up Coriantumr because they had to fulfill the prophecy by Ether that told Coriantumr, you will live to see the people that will replace you upon this land, and by them you shall receive a burial. Ether 13 and 21. So they had to pick up Coriantumr. Now, we don't know Coriantumr, he's bumbling around. You know, when you read the account, he's been hacked up so many times. I really doubt he went too far from Lake Ontario. I mean, the guy had to be a cripple with all the wounds that he had. Had to be a cripple, which means they had to pick him up somewhere in that general area. That's just my personal take. So Nephi leaves Laman. So where's Hopewell's oldest third site? There is one. I'm going to show it to you right here. Happens to be East Tennessee. And I've selected East Tennessee because it's the only other place that we have copper mines in North America. When Nephi erects the first temple, our scriptures tell us he adorned it in copper. And what we find here, we find Hopewell dates that match the Nephite timeline in the Book of Mormon, and we find this. This is so amazing. The stone ruins of a large stone and wood structure uncovered beneath a Hopewell mound was made during an excavation of the site that was about to be flooded by the building of the TVA Dam project. Rendell Harris placed heavy emphasis on Egyptian presence in East Tennessee due to the place names that were still in use by the local natives and the fact that eastern Tennessee was rich in copper, also suggesting an Atlantic crossing. The temple was erected on the Clinch River just below an Indian burial ground, and the book is called A Temple in Tennessee, University of London, 1935. Rendell Harris is a specialist on Egyptology. We're looking at here what could very possibly be Nephi's first temple. They've never found another structure like this under any large Hopewell mounds, only here. And unfortunately today, this is under 60 feet of water because of the dam. That's why they're allowed to dig it. Another parallel. I can't tell you it's Nephi's temple. I'm just telling you it's a parallel. And it fits the Book of Mormon timeline. And then out of that, using East Tennessee, I finally understood how these guys were moving around. I was sitting in Book of Mormon class, just like you guys were, several years ago, during Sunday school, and Mosiah, living in the land of Nephi, is commanded by the Lord to take the people of Nephi to Zarahemla. But he tells them that they're going to go down into the land which is called Zarahemla. And then when they're there, some of them probably got homesick, and in two places, they told Mosiah they wanted to return to the land of Nephi, and both times they say they went up into the wilderness, and now they went up into the wilderness. Well, the lights went on for me in Book of Mormon class, and I figured, man, what's the elevation? And here we are, East Tennessee, maximum is 3,000, 1,800 is a normal, and here at Zarahemla, the site across from Nauvoo, 600 is max, 300 is typical. So they're moving by elevation because they're using the rivers of the land to get around. So that made sense to them. They understand north, south, east, and west, don't get me wrong. But when they travel, they're traveling by the waters, and they understand up and down because of which way the current is flowing. And then I checked that out in the Bible, and it's the same. If you're in Jerusalem, any place you leave to go to, because Jerusalem is what? Very, very high, you always go down to Bethlehem. You go down to Capernaum. You go down, go down. And if you're in Bethlehem or Capernaum or any other place, and you go to Jerusalem, it always says you go up. And especially when you go to the temples, you never go down to a temple. You always go up to a temple. Check your scriptures, you'll see it. It's all over. And then this one, Alma 22, and thus the land of Nephi was nearly surrounded by water. For me, by picking East Tennessee, right here, I've got these key spots. This right here is the Cumberland River, and this up here is the Tennessee River. And this is almost nearly surrounded by water. It doesn't have to be oceans. Rivers are just as important. The Egyptian temple is found there at the Norris Dam. This is Tower Hill. This is in your scriptures. We've got the largest standing hill in that area. It overlooks the land in the Book of Mormon, Shimlon and Shemlon. And here from Tower Hill, you can see into 7 states today. It's huge. Here's the best Hopewell stone fort, I think really very, very close in all of North America. It's a dandy. And it's right smack dab in the middle. And here are Hebrew stone box burials, atypical, all within inside those 2 rivers. This is my choice for the land of Nephi. It's just my choice. I can't tell you it's totally accurate, but this is my choice, and these are my reasons why. So here's a map. Mulek to the north, Lehi to the south, arriving in North America, and they won't see each other for 400 years. Okay? War and weapons. Everybody likes weapons, right? Let's take a look. Nevertheless, after many days, their dead bodies were heaped up upon the face of the earth, and they were covered with a shallow covering. These are battle mounds. They're all over the Midwest. If you find one in good shape, this is what you'll see. This is genocide. Men, women, and children killed, thrown into a pile. And this here comes out of New York. When they did the New York excavating in 1840s and 1850s, they talk about the bone pits all over the hills of western New York, all around Cumorah. Bone pits, just like this. And here they've taken up the bones and stacked them up for you to see. It's in the old books. Okay, Alma 49, 4 and 5. But behold, how great was their disappointment. For behold, the Nephites had dug up a ridge of earth round about them, which was so high that the Lamanites could not cast their stones and their arrows at them. Yeah, right there. Their batteries are right in my case there, sorry. So, first thing I had to ask myself, what does it mean to cast? How do you cast a stone? Well, slings, that I can understand. How do you cast arrows? That was the next question. Understanding casting of arrows, we would find the chief weapon of the Lamanites. Which is the atl. This is the most common point that we find throughout the Midwest. And even out here. It's used for hunting, it's used for warfare. People, of course, it's a misnomer. They find, they're so big, and they say, oh, look at this great arrowhead. No, it's not an arrowhead. It's an atlatl point. An arrowhead this big would take a shaft probably about 12 feet to carry it. I mean, you couldn't draw the bow that big to fire it, you know what I mean? So arrowheads are little teeny things, just little, call them bird points, they're teeny. These are atlatl points. This is the weapon of choice. And then the Nephites, we know the Nephites were using the bow and the arrow because when Samuel shows up on the walls, our scriptures tell us that they shot arrows at them. So here we go, swords, scimitars. And you can see here, here's the scriptures where we see all that. And you know, people always ask, well, show me the swords, show me the scimitars, what do we got to look at? And we have right there. Now the Roman short sword was only 12 inches long. This one here comes from Lake Gogebic. You get them in the right way? Still won't do it. Let me just, I don't know why it stopped. Here, put it over on this side. Try that one, see if that does. It must have died. Okay. All right, so anyway, I can do it manually. Sure. Yeah. Now, look at this here. Scimitars and swords, hardened copper, beautifully done, and there they are. Now, one of the things that which is really a surprise, when you go to the museums, you'll find all kinds of copper points, but you won't see any swords. And we've got swords galore all over. This man here found one walking his dog on the shoreline of Lake Superior. He pulled that right up out of the sand. He took it to a museum, Toronto, Canada, and offered to give it to the museum to put on display. They refused the sword. Now, why would they do that? Indians don't use swords. It has to be fake. Okay? They totally refused it. Indians don't have swords.
Copper, iron.
All copper. All copper. Hardened copper. You can't bend it with your hands. Now here we go. The breastplates, the head plates. This head plate up here, this is the back of the head, this is the crown of the head, this is the forward. These here are grommets, and these here are ear coverings. The helmets of the Nephites, I should say the helmets of the Hopewell, were held together with leather and cloth. Not like we see in our paintings by Freeburg. Nothing like out of Rome, nothing out of Greece. Like a football helmet. Cloth, leather, grommets, held together. And we find these in many, many burials. The breastplates. See the large hole? Imagine a knotted cord. You pull the knot through the hole and then you cinch it. Pull it through the hole and cinch. And then to stabilize it, you run a knotted cord around the back of your neck to the front. That holds it on your chest. These are their breastplates of the Hopewell. And then over here, look at these beauties. All this came off the Missouri River, and especially this one here. Going to take a look at this guy. This particular sword, Ryan was in Israel, and he sends me this top picture. And he sent it to me because he thought it was really cool because it was for sale, you know, in an antique store. And boy, but neat to have. But as soon as I saw it, I thought, holy mackerel, look at that thing. And then I saw about the sword in Missouri. Look at the handles. The handles are exact. The only difference in these swords is the top one is made for thrusting. The bottom one is made for hacking. The fat blade versus the pointed blade. That's the only difference. And they're both made out of bronze. Bronze in Missouri. Imagine that. These are all smelted copper spear points. These came out of Libertyville, Illinois, out of a burial mound. Now here's the difference. These are cold hammered. This is a process we've lost. We do not know how they did this. They're very, very hard. All copper. No smelting here. It's a cold hammer process. You can see where the shaft would go in, and they had a pin. There's one in Milwaukee on display, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the pin is actually iron, an iron pin. Neato. Governor Laconius, this is one of my favorites. Governor Laconius, if you remember your Book of Mormon stories, the Gadiantons now are so tough They're taking on the Lamanites and the Nephites during the daytime in open warfare. And so Governor Laconis decides to gather everybody into one space and to fortify it. So what he does, he goes to the middle of the Promised Land area, wherever that is. What we have in archaeology, we have a place right here, pretty well centered at the very tip of Illinois. And what this is an enigma to our archaeologists, because right down here, the green is the higher elevation, 500 to 1,000. The tan is lower elevation. And all the fortifications they build a line here all the way across. This is about 90 miles. This is the Ohio up to this point. This is the Mississippi down to here. And all the forts are right there on that line. And right there. 41 forts, all in a line. And the reason it's such an enigma, because they were only there for 7 years, they didn't leave a lot of stuff around. Oh, you gotta drop it in. Oh dear, what do I gotta do next? Press the key to the right of the shift key. Trying to get a different pointer here. Our pointer died. Hold on. I don't know if that's gonna.
Just close it.
Close it?
Yeah.
It's working. Thank you, sir. So where am I driving here?
Left and right.
Left and right.
Forward and backward.
Okay, thank you. So there it is. Now when you go there, you can see the forts. This is War Bluff. Let me get back up here on my feet. This is War Bluff. Now what they have here is the uplift. They've got on the top here, you've got all the fortifications right up on top, but they only have one place. I'm trying to find the, oh, there it is. This right here is all high elevation, all the way around. And there will be one place where you can walk up naturally to get on top of this plateau, and that's where they place the wall of stone. These walls usually run about 12 feet, and there's no doorway in the walls. So this becomes a total barrier. And so this would hold animals and people up here. Our Native Americans tell us they put the women and children up here for safety, but then on the back, somewhere on the back side, and we'll get there, look at here. Look how high these are. 100, 200, 150 feet, all the way to the top. You don't need walls up on top. You don't need walls up here. Nobody's going to come up this to gain access. And down here, look at my buddy Dave. See Dave down here? Look how big this is. Here's the top, all the way down to Dave. 41 of these across southern Illinois. But there's always a back door. The back door is wide enough for one person at a time to go from the top all the way down to the forest floor. If the men were off fighting and the women and children had to block this up, they could do it in a heartbeat. They could have a loose pile of stone up there just to pour down into the crevice and block it off. Or they could kill their enemies one at a time because they're in single file. Everyone has a back door. Amazing. Temples. Everybody likes temples. Mosiah, for the multitude being so great that King Benjamin could not teach them all within the walls of the temple. So now we know in Book of Mormon, they had walls around their temples. Let's take a look at a Hopewell temple plot. There it is. Here's the platform. The building would stand on top of this. The black area is the ditch that creates the wall. This is a dirt wall. And the water that's here used to lap right along the edge here. This is all dropped now because the waters have changed. This is waterway all right here. Here's your walls all the way around. Typical Hopewell temple site. This is called the Hanukkiah earthworks. They recognize it for its Hebrew appearance. In our scriptures, it talks about a city named after Lehi that was built in a particular manner. Now, I can't tell you this is Lehi's city. I can tell you it could have been. Nothing else was ever built like this. But let's take a look at it. Anybody see anything obvious besides the menorah? How's the oil lamp? How about that? On the same page? How about that? Okay. About 1905, the United States Corps of Army Engineers came to this site in Milford, Ohio, and they leveled this whole thing. Took it right down to the ground. The other sites in Ohio, they did not touch. But this one, you see, this shows contact across the pond. No contact allowed by our government. Manifest destiny. That's a whole nother story. Manifest destiny. That's what's in the way here. Let's go on. Now, summer 2009, this was so much fun. I'm on tour with Bruce Porter. We got a tour group of about 55 people. You know what it's like to be a tour guide with 55 people in Israel? It's like herding cats. You get off the bus and everybody wants to go see this or go see that, and holy mackerel, you know. And we're always worried about losing somebody over there, you know. But anyway, another story. So we're here at Megiddo. We got our Israeli tour guide is Rabbi Wallenstein, really nice guy. He takes us up here. Israel, archaeologists, in that corner, they've cut away a huge swath. There's about 24, 25 different layers of occupation, or maybe even 30, I can't remember exactly. But they're showing each layer of occupation all through the ages. And he gets down to a certain area, and he says, here is a Canaanite altar, here is a Hebrew altar. And we're looking at them, they're both made out of natural stone, and, you know, it didn't look any different. And luckily, a woman raised her hand and said, Rabbi, I don't understand, what's the difference? And Wallenstein says, well, it's obvious. He said, if you look at it, he said, they always have staircases going up to the Canaanite altars. He says, for Israel, that is to have a stairs going up to the altar, that's against the law of Moses. That's a sin. And we said, what? A sin to have a staircase? Come on. He said, yeah. He said, what would happen, you see, is that the families would gather all around for the ceremony, and as the men would go up the staircase, you know, no one wore underwear in those days. They just had their skirts. And so the people on the bottom here would see their private parts going up the staircase. And the Lord says, no nakedness going up to my altar. That's also a sin. Okay, well, that night we got back. Hotel Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee. Porter and I are pouring through the Old Testament. We're saying, man, this is crazy. Never heard of such a thing, right? Well, guess what? Exodus, we're going to talk about 25 also, but Exodus 26. Neither shalt thou go up by steps unto mine altar, that thy nakedness be not discovered thereon. The rabbi knew exactly what he was talking about. So he said, well, how do they get up there? He said, ramps. They build long, extended ramps. So it's a gradual climb up to the altar. That's what they do. Only the Israelites built ramps. All their neighbors throughout all of ancient Middle East, they all used staircases. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. Well, then when you said that, you know what I thought of? I thought, boy, how are they going to answer this one? Every altar is at the top of staircases. Are these guys obeying the law of Moses? Not according to the scriptures I read. Not my problem. I always say it's not my monkeys, not my circus, you know. That's their problem. All right? So then, now the next part, I'm back in Ohio, and I'm looking at Ohio Temple mounts. They're all ramped. They're all ramped. Parallels again. Parallel, 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 parallel. How many parallels do we need? Parallels. And then I dropped in a Israeli altar, ramped. Ramp, ramp, ramp. No stairs. Okay? Now let's go back and look at verse 25. If thou make me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone, that's cut. For if thou lift thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. You can talk to 10, 15, 20, 100 men and women that have worked south of the Rio Grande, and they'll tell you every single altar has been cut. Cut stone. No plain stone, no natural rock. Doesn't exist down there for their altars and construction. They're all carved. So again, they're in violation of the Ten Commandments and of the law of Moses. So I'm looking at here, Hebrew altar, Negev Desert, Temple of Arad, all natural stone, nice little small square. Let's check out a Hopewell altar and see what we've got for parallels. There it is, folks. Hopewell, another match. United States. This one's good. Timothy Jenkins runs around and decides to pick up all the Hebrew-related things he could find. And I'm going to do this real fast. Those two words in the red. Remember the temple? We've had a change, yes? Yes? I'm not sure? Yes. Okay. You can see the words. What are the Adamic words doing here in North America? Another question. Something else to do. Something else to solve. Adamic words. Okay? This is good. Look at the trapper. Look at the chief. Look at their arms and hands. Are we there? Pretty quiet. Yes? Okay, now let me tell you what's going on. The first time this trapper met this chief, probably 6 months ago, could even be a year ago. You know, they don't get around real fast in those days, in the 1600s. When he first met him, his arms raised to the square, and he doesn't say how. He says, "Ao." The greeting of the Great Lakes, "Ao. I come in peace, I bear no arms." The standard greeting. So if the chief likes this guy, which obviously he did, the chief tells him, if you come back here and I'm not here, I'm out hunting or somewhere else, and you want to stay here in protection of our village, this is the sign. This is the sign you have to make. And then who's ever in charge in my absence, they will know that you've already been introduced to us, and you can come here and sleep within our village. You are welcome if you make that sign. That's what that means. Native Americans of the Great Lakes. Okay? You guys want more? I got a little more. Okay. Earthworks. You know, it's kind of funny. People tell me all the time, I can't stay. After we get through 40, 42, 1, 42 for Alma with all the, you know, the baptism of the dead, those are cool, but then it's the war chapters. I hate the rest of Alma. But once they see this, you'll like Alma. Okay? All right. 48. Yea, Moroni have been erecting small forts or places of resort, throwing up banks of earth round about to enclose his armies, also building walls of stone to encircle him about, round about their cities. And upon the top of these ridges of earth he caused that there should be timbers built to the height of a man, and he caused towers to be erected. Well, what do we find here? We find small forts, just like this. The black area is the ditch, the white area is the earthen berm, all the way around. These are the small forts, they're the most numerous. Then we find the hill forts. This has a 600-foot climb to the top, 33 openings where the towers used to stand. This is the main way in, main way out. We'll explain all that a little later. And then we find these, the geometrics. Perfect math, perfect squares, perfect rectangles, perfect circles. Not bad for a barbarian people chasing deer through the woods all their life. The geometrics, amazing. Here's a ditch. Without scale, you can't tell, right, how deep this ditch is. Well, I'm going to walk down in that ditch, and then you're going to see. That's how big the ditch is. These things are huge. Right there, in the ditch. Here's one doorway. This is Fort Ancient. Standing on the highway, it runs through the fort on the north end. 25-foot high banks on each side. It used to be around 36, according to the archaeologists. All this dirt came from here. This was made into a cornfield, so it was filled in. But all this dirt came from here. This is the bank. Pretty high. Pretty high. Now, all these things here are to scale. This is one geometric earthwork. This is Sipe. Here's the Roman Colosseum, Stonehenge, Pyramid of Giza, Statue of Liberty. All this is to scale. Pyramid goes in the square. The whole thing. There's Stonehenge. We're going to drop the Colosseum in the middle, and we're going to throw the Statue of Liberty in just for kicks. These things are monstrous. Big, big, big cities. And no matter where they go, they can repeat their construction to the exact same sizes. Same size squares, same size circles. It doesn't matter. And these things are always set to archaeological, astronomical alignments for calendaring. When to plant, when to harvest, last day of winter, first day of spring. Dr. James Shears went out to the octagon, the Newark octagon, which this is, and surveyed it and came up with some fantastic stuff. He found out that the squares up here are all at 606 feet. That's called a stade. It's a measurement in Europe. And then he goes even further. There's you go. This right here is a line of sight. This is the observation deck. There's true north. And in the northernmost rise of the moon, coldest day of the year, the moon will rise right here, and you'll see this running right down the old deck, all the way through. Now these are huge. These things are built to clock the movements of the moon. And then right here, the observation mount. Notice the angle here, 51.8 degrees, because we're going to step over here. There's the square. Now this right here is the angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is right there. And the Pyramid of Giza is 606 feet to the top. Because of that measurement, they know that the 606 feet right down here equals 1/10 of a nautical mile. So times 10, you get 6,060 feet. That's 1 minute of latitude arc. That's how the Egyptians knew the circumference of the earth. This math is in the mounds of Ohio on these barbarous hunter-gatherer people that don't know anything. It's amazing. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Place of entrance, 49 and 20, and thus they were prepared a body of their strongest men with their swords and slings to smite down all who should attempt to come in their place of security by place of entrance. Absolute key. Look at this. Okay, red guys are attacking, the blue guys are defending. They're on top of the berms. They're in the towers. Red guys can't go over the banks, so they got to go around them. And the minute they do this, what's happening inside here? Crossfire. They want them to come in. They're asking them to come on in. Crossfire. Crossfire with their bows and their slings. And if they have enough guys to wade through all that mess and death, they're going to meet blue guys and they're going to jam up those last two doors and they're going to keep them in that killing field. This is what Captain Moroni built in Ohio, and it worked for a couple hundred years until the Lamanites got so numerous they could overrun these gates. This is Ohio, place of entrance. And upon the top of these ridges of earth, he caused there should be timbers built to the height of a man, and he built a frame of pickets upon the timbers, and he caused towers to be erected. This right here is Spruce Hill. This work here was done by Emerson Greenman. Intense burning, log structure, all in the walls. It's the wood wall that used to go all the way around here. And this is 2¼ miles of walls. This is a hilltop fort. And this is what they look like. Here the archaeologists have taken the post stains from the ground, and they can drop the same size of tree into a wall, and a tower. And they also, not all of them, a lot of them they'll find a plaster material like concrete on the outside to prevent probably fire. This guy here, Robert, he's doing the best job. He started in the late 80s and into the 90s looking at the berms that has been passed over by the archaeologists. He says the enclosure is circular, built upon a stockade of burned, sturdy logs. Again, showing that this was a defensive structure. Here we have logs, that's what it looks like, and that's where you find your post molds. This is out of the one in Tennessee, and look at the dates, 30 AD, 230 AD, 430 AD. Book of Mormon timeline, all close enough. Here's the Pollock works for Riordan. There's the places of entrance. He's got 3 designed. This is the actual approach. This is one of my favorites because it's not been made into a park. It's still natural. It's tough to get around, but you can see everything. This is actually one berm. This is actually a berm here. This is one of the ways in. This here was covered with a stone walkway that he discovered. And then I walk inside here, and you can see the berms, how big they are. And then I'm going to go up on top, and there you are on the berms. Now, because of the post molds he's found, I'm going to reconstruct with Photoshop what the walls may have looked like. Right there. Tower, wall, height of a man. The only thing here I really had to guess at, we don't know what the gate looked like. That's the only thing I really had to guess at. And here at Fort Ancient, Connolly and Essen Press, they did a lot of great work here at their house cluster. Look at the dating up here. Whoops, got to back up. Look at the dating. 390 BC to 380 AD. Continuous occupation, almost the whole run of the Book of Mormon. Hopewell. Hopewell. Narrow Pass. This is brand new. I've got a whole hour and a half talk on this, which will be delivered in April at the conference in Orem, Provo, with Meldrum's group. And this is the Narrow Pass. Crossing the neck, of course, it's a day-and-a-half journey. That's one point that we see. From east to the West Sea, that's the thing here. East to the West Sea. But we never know what's in the east. Then down here, Helaman, he calls it a day's journey. So I thought that was interesting. And we've got a difference here of 90 BC to 77 BC, 35 to 31, about a 40-year difference. So something had to take place from the first time at 90 BC down to the last time at 31 BC. Something took place to lop off half a day of their journey. I do not believe it was an error in the script. Something had to happen, and I think it had to do with the forts. And what was really neat about this is that this next thing here, east to west, we never know what the heck they're talking about. What is in the east? Something for the writers was understood, that everybody would know what's in the east. There was a barrier that was left out. And I think what we found it. And the reason I found it is because Ryan back there, he called me up and he said, "Hey Wayne, you ever heard about the Great Black Swamp?" And I said, "No, I had never heard anything about a Great Black Swamp." And he said, "I'm going to send you a JPEG. Check this out." So there it is, Great Black Swamp. This is the JPEG that Ryan sent me, and I'm looking at this thing, and I say, holy mackerel, Fort Wayne, Indiana? This is Ohio? This goes in, holy smoke. This is Lake Erie. This is an extension of Lake Erie. Well, how big is this thing? And I got this one. Now it's really looking big. Okay. Then my next question was, when was that here? Okay, when is that here? Well, it's 150 miles long, run about 50 miles across, and then Ryan says, well, check out Dr. Bradley Lepper's book on Ohio archaeology. And I did. And here again, they have done the work for us. They've done all the work, and they tell us during the Hopewell timeline, Lake Erie was all the way out to here. This swamp didn't get drained until the 1880s by our ancestors, Europeans. This, to me, becomes the barrier that they talk about to the east. Well, the question was, they're always saying West Sea to the east. So for me, the tip of Lake Michigan would be my Western Sea. Now, right there, that's how it would stand today. But we also know that Lake Michigan was extended out here as well as this during the same timeline. And that's the one thing. I only have some broad information. I've got to get some better information. I want to get it exact. Currently today, without the Lake Michigan, it'd be 184 miles. If I go by the glacial shorelines and we back them up, and one or two of them are going to be our Book of Mormon timeline, we're going to get that down to a 70, 80 mile crossing, and that can be handled. And why the extra half a day shaved off? Because when they fortified it, it took away probably the brush. There's probably a road across there. And so this would be my choice for the narrow pass. It leads into the land southward or leads into the land northward. Lake Michigan, Western Sea. Western Sea to the east. East of what? This right here would be, this is the size of the swamp. This is where the line would be, right there. I mean, it's huge. So we've still got narrow necks. This is still a narrow neck because the sea has to divide the land. These are two narrow necks here and as well here on Lake St. Clair. So I still don't know for sure where the narrow neck is. My choice would be here by Lake St. Clair, only because we have archaeological data. The city of Detroit is sitting on top of a Jaredite city that was absolutely huge. And of course, our scripture comes from the Jaredites, that they built a great city by the narrow neck of land, by the place where the sea divides the land. The sea has to divide the land. The land here divides the sea. This is the pass. One of these here are going to be our neck for Book of Mormon. Okay? That's where that's at right now. I've got Kirtland Temple. That's my choice for the Bonneville Temple site because of what's happened there. And then again, there's Detroit. There is a place to start. That's how I look at it for the entire lands. Book of Mormon. Okay, final comments. Go back? Oh, you want to take a picture? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. You're welcome. Uh-oh.
Can you go back one more, the one before with the narrow neck?
Oh, wrong way. Sorry. Right there? Okay. Shoot away. Isn't this fun? Fun stuff, huh? What I'd like to show you tonight, what I can't, but there's just so much more to this. We've got fortifications. We got fortifications running from here all the way to St. Lawrence County, New York, up here. We got 109 forts verified along the water. And that's all part of it. You got to come down in April, get the story. Okay. All right, final comments. And let them build up a city unto my name upon the land opposite the city of Nauvoo, and let the name of Zarahemla be named upon it. This is my choice for the city of Zarahemla. I believe that Iowa and Illinois share the land of Zarahemla, and this is where I've spent my work. Over here is the site. Our temple site for Zarahemla is right here. As you can see, this is Nauvoo. Got a lovely shot across the river. It's directly across. I mean, it's just, well. I was standing by the temple talking to Brother Woodruff, and he pointed out to me a spot opposite the side of the river, about 1.5 miles above Montrose, and said there would be a city and a temple built there, and the place would be called Zarahemla. Church History Department, archives. And then, here's Montrose, here's our temple site, and it is 1.5 miles above Montrose. I want to show that to you. That is an aerial of our temple site. This is the east. This is the west is out here. Here's the berm. The north berm is really flattened, but the east berm and the south berm and the west berm, you can all easily see them. Our temple plot is right about in this general area. And what I'm going to do, did the clipboard get passed around to everybody? Okay, I don't know where it got held up, but if you give us your email, okay, you have my emails on the handout. If you want to see information from the temple site, send me an email and just say, Wayne, send me the JPEGs for the temple site. I've got 2 really good JPEGs full of tons of information, and I'll send them to you straight away. But I ask for it, so I know that's what you want, okay? And then what's nice is that the archaeologists support the Book of Mormon in this way. I believe that Hopewell developed as an indigenous system from the earlier woodland cultures within the Illinois River Valley. It seems quite significant that all major Hopewellian sites outside of central Ohio were located to the west in Illinois and adjoining areas rather than to the east. You see, Ohio has become the center for the Hopewell, but Ohio begins at 100 BC. Florida, Tennessee, Illinois are all 500 BC, because then the whole thing shifts from the west to the east, and that's what they're finding. The extensive spread and development of the Hopewell culture eastward through Indiana and Illinois indicates that there are no major barriers in that direction. And then Proofer tells us there are indications that Hopewell went through a long and piecemeal degeneration which may have lasted 200 to 500 years, ending perhaps about AD 450. We'll take that. During this decline, there seemed to have been an end to widespread trade, resulting in disappearance of foreign exotic materials. There's also decline in the importance of building large mounds and ceremonial enclosures, and he's accurate. And right here, James Talmage, this is our apostle James Talmage. He was best pals with William Mills. Mills is the head archaeologist for the state of Ohio, because Talmage was a geologist, and he worked out here. And they knew each other quite well. This comes out of out of Talmage's journal of what Mills told him about this area. Mills says, and I quote, "The area now included within the political boundaries defining the state of Ohio was once inhabited by two distinct people, representing two cultures, a higher and a lower. These two cultural types or distinct peoples were generally in a state of hostility one toward the other, the lower culture being more commonly the aggressor and the higher the defender. From a careful collating of data, it is demonstrated that the general course of migration through the area now defined as the state of Ohio was inward from the west and outward toward the east." You see, the archaeologists recognize this eastward movement of the Hopewell. They all pile up in Ohio, and then around 400 AD, they go into Pennsylvania, and they vanish. Where'd they go? They went to Palmyra, Cumorah. That's where they went. But the archaeologists haven't picked up on that. You see, the Book of Mormon is such, it's like all the missing pieces are there for us to fit together. It tells a great story, a marvelous story. And there we are, March. Bingo. The end. Collected Works by Dr. Hugh Nibley, the Prophetic Book of Mormon. If you guys have these books in your home, you'll have this, Volume 8, Chapter 14. He says, "What most impressed me last summer on my first and only expedition to Central America was a complete lack of information about anything." Dr. Nibley. I think I'm in good company. And then on a serious note, a closer approximation to the Book of Mormon picture of Nephite culture is seen in the earth and palisade structures of the Hopewell and the Adena culture areas than in the later stately piles of stone in Mesoamerica. Dr. Nibley. Couple of scriptures, Nephi 22, 7 and 8. "And it meaneth the time cometh that after all the house of Israel have been scattered and confounded, that the Lord God will raise up a mighty nation among the Gentiles, even upon the face of this land. And by them shall our seed be scattered. And after our seed is scattered, the Lord God will proceed to do a marvelous work among the Gentiles, which shall be of great worth unto our seed. Wherefore it is likened unto their being nourished by the Gentiles and being carried in their arms and upon their shoulders." 2 Nephi 10, 10 through 12. "But behold, this land, said God, shall be a land of thine inheritance, and the Gentiles shall be blessed upon the land. And this land shall be a land of liberty unto the Gentiles, and there shall be no kings upon the land who shall raise up unto the Gentiles. I will fortify this land against all other nations." Brothers and sisters, is this Guatemala? Is this Brazil? Is this the Yucatan Peninsula? Ecuador? Where is this land? When I read my scriptures, the promised land that I understand, the Garden of Eden was there, Adam lived there, Noah lived there, Adam on the Ammon is there, Enoch lived there. And I read my Book of Mormon, it tells me the nation of Gentiles is there. It will be a land of liberty, a land of a free nation, land of the New Jerusalem, no kings in the land, nations of the world will flow into it, and it's going to be protected against all other nations. For me, this can only be one place, right here. I report, and you decide.